beautiful souls. It's Robin, and you're listening to the Live Life Balance podcast. I'm so excited that you dropped by today, prioritizing you and your wellness. This podcast is for my empty nester mamas, women who are getting close to this new chapter, who have dipped one toe in, or who are fully embracing this new phase. This is for the mamas who are ready to take back their health, to live their best lives. If you're looking for an authentic, supportive community, you're definitely in the right place. It's a space for us to learn how to prioritize ourselves again. I'll be your guide, pointing you to ideas and tools that you can experiment with to see what feels good for you. You'll also hear guests talking about their journeys and what's worked for them. Together, we're going to learn how to use the 1% shift method to create little shifts and habits that, who knows, maybe become your non-negotiables to feel your best. By feeling our best, we can show up in our purpose and live the most joyful life, even in the challenging times. And boy, this new chapter can seem challenging, but I can assure you we're not alone. Some of the topics we're going to talk about are self-love, self-care, nutrition, daily toxins, food swaps, mindset, and reframing our thoughts. I hope you leave each time feeling a little more empowered and at ease to take a step or two that will allow you to shine. Are you ready? If you said yes, take a nice deep breath and say, I am ready. Now let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to today's episode. We're going to be chatting with Marnee, who is an integrative health practitioner specializing in hormones and perimenopause. So if you are in that midlife chapter and you are in the throes of perimenopause or menopause itself or postmenopause, this episode is definitely for you. It goes beyond just menopause and hormones. We talk about mold toxicity, we talk about thyroid stuff, we talk about different conditions and how some of the natural things she has found through personal experience and through schooling has helped a lot of other people to heal. She's created a program called the Restored Hormone Solution, which is for women over 35 who want to regain their energy, release stubborn weight, and feel confident again. So let's get into this episode so that we can walk away with something this week to try on. Remember, it's all about those 1% shifts. It's not about trying to tackle everything at one time. So here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am super excited today to have Marnee on, and we've been chit-chatting a little bit before, but I just want to jump right in. So Marnee, welcome, and how are you today?
Good, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting. I came across your content and it resonates with me because obviously I am postmenopausal at this point. And I really have women kind of on the journey with me. I'm not an expert in all things. I do believe in integrative health and wellness. I am a coach because I believe everybody's journey is their own, and the whole 1% shift really has to do with where you're starting from. But how did you get where you are today? I'm just curious because, again, you talk about all the things that I love. So,
yeah, that's a great question. My journey is a little bit unique. It started first when I had my first baby. I kicked in low thyroid. So that was my first experience with hormonal imbalances. And it was a new thing for me. It's actually quite common for women to have a thyroid condition or low thyroid after having a baby, which I wasn't aware of. You know, your early 30s, you're just thinking, I have a newborn, I'm exhausted, the weight isn't coming off. You just think this is normal. And it wasn't until I went to my naturopath and functional health practitioner that she said, no, you're testing really low on thyroid. And that's when I decided to go on Armour Thyroid, which is a natural form of thyroid. And I knew I didn't want to be on medication for the rest of my life for my thyroid. I wanted to figure out, why was it low? Why was it imbalanced, right? And so I actually was able to be on desiccated thyroid for 4 years and heal my thyroid, where I wasn't needing to be on Synthroid. Not that those are bad, but that was my choice to try to really heal my thyroid versus just take medication for the rest of my life. So my thyroid ended up balancing out. It was in optimal ranges. That was amazing. But then it wasn't until years later that we were building a house and we were in a rental, and didn't know, but we had black mold in it. And I got really sick with mold toxicity. And again, I did not suspect it. I'd been to specialists, I'd been to my family doctor. I actually even got rushed into a full body MRI at one point because my brain fog, migraines, and exhaustion was so bad that I had no idea what was going on. Finally got rushed into an MRI in the middle of the night. And thankfully, it was nothing major, nothing big, but I walked out of there with no answers. They said to me, eventually, we've done everything we can testing wise, and your blood work all looks good, lab work, MRI looks fine. And I was just left with nothing and no solutions, no answers. But knowing myself, I was not going to settle for that. I was not going to feel dismissed. I felt gaslit. I felt frustrated. So I ended up finding another functional health practitioner, and I suspected maybe Lyme disease, didn't even think about mold. And we were able to do a bunch of functional testing, which again is an investment. But when you don't have your health and you're not functioning as a mom and you can't barely drive your kids to school or all the things, you're going to do what you have to do to gain back your health. And we did the organic acids test, and we realized that I had 3 types of black mold. I tested very high for mold. And so that's when I really needed to dig deep and advocate for myself and get to that root cause. That was definitely a root cause. But then we also did a GI map, recognizing it's never just one thing. So yes, it was mold, but yes, I had candida. Yes, I had leaky gut. My inflammation was through the roof. I felt like my brain was on fire. Like I knew I needed to peel back the layers, and I needed to just start with just the basics. And so she was able to help me. And I'd never heard of, opening your drainage pathways. I'd never, heard of all these things. And then when I got into that functional medicine space of this made sense to me, this is what was holding me back. And then I did, starting from square one and opening, my drainage pathways, and then going into a gut protocol, and then into a mold protocol, and even parasite cleansing. That's where I found my, body to truly heal. And my hormones were a disaster. My nervous system, like I, at one point, said to my husband, I feel like my body is vibrating, and I could barely, when I laid down. And now looking back, my vagus nerve and my nervous system was completely shot. I was so dysregulated. So again, recognizing that this played a part in a whole body systems. It wasn't just one part. And I needed to dig deep and start healing different parts of my body. And once I kind of got on track with that, here I am in perimenopause now, and have recognized, okay, I need to continue supporting my body and my hormones. And this is what's going to make me feel the best. And so that's where I really recognize, okay, my blood sugars need to be, regulated. I need to really dial in that cortisol. So then my whole journey now in my mid 40s of how to feel my best has really just amplified by the stuff that I've learned through this, 8-year process of healing my body and helping other women recognize, hey, if we can do perimenopause well, we're going to do menopause well. We need to start now and not start when all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we need to, start doing the things.
Yeah. First of all, so much of I think what you just said, so many other people have been living, maybe not the path of healing yet, but the path of getting the no for the answer. Raise your hand, not if you're driving, but if you're listening and somebody has said, well, your labs look good. It's like people don't understand. It doesn't matter really it does matter what your labs look like, but it doesn't matter if your labs look great if you don't feel good. Like if you're not feeling good, that's the most frustrating answer to get. And so I do believe, though, when you get that answer, that is really what pushes you and drives you to do the digging, right? It drives you to say, that is not okay. Like, I can't live like this my whole life. And like you, I had thyroid issues. Mine was more autoimmune, the Hashimoto's, my daughter and I, and after, endocrinologist, it's like, and I was on some natural stuff and they're like, well, we can't see you if you're on anything natural. And I'm like, okay, nothing is making sense. And no, I'm not going to get off of that just because why can't you see me? Like, that just didn't make sense. So I ended up going to holistic route. Also for me, I did take some desiccated, which we probably should talk about a little bit, but, just by switching my diet, honestly, just getting rid of like some big inflammation. And I was a pretty healthy person. I wasn't, like really struggling, I didn't think. But I couldn't gain weight. That was one of the things, but it was because my thyroid was so like all over the place. But just simply by doing a couple of tweaks to my diet, all of a sudden I could start feeling changes, right? And it wasn't anything drastic. It was just learning what is inflaming my body. My body is so inflamed internally that my thyroid cannot function, and your thyroid's everything, right? So it's like, so that was kind of my first like, oh, okay, well, that makes more sense. So yeah, if I'm eating something that's irritating me, why would I do that? So I'm not going to do that anymore. So those kinds of things. Now, stress brought in a whole nother factor of adrenal fatigue, and it brought in a whole nother factor of bringing up Epstein-Barr and all that. And then it was like, oh, now I got to get this is not working. And a pill's not going to fix that. I needed to learn how to manage my stress differently. I needed to understand that it's okay to give grace, and it's okay not to take everything to the heightened level, right? But it's like each thing you go through, each challenge really does truly bring that opportunity for growth. I think one of the things you said that I really want to talk about, because so many people, there are some buzzwords, right? There's not really mold toxicity. I do believe that that's coming to the forefront, and I do think a lot more people suffer than actually know. But it's complicated, right? It's complicated to figure out. Nothing is easy. There is no quick fix. There's no pill. And if somebody tells you that the magic pill is going to be the cure, they're really just bluffing. And it might give you a little bit of relief, but it's not curing the actual depth of what it's happening. So I loved how you talked about your protocol, like with Candida and all the little nuanced things that you kind of found. But people also find out, let's say they have Candida, or they find out like they have leaky gut, and they go on these protocols, but their body is really not ready for the protocol, right? It hasn't been primed. It hasn't had the drainage pathways opened, like the lymph system's not working properly. So could you talk just a little bit about, because I'm sure there are people that are curious, when you said opening like your drainage pathways, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, interesting enough, I had been going to naturopaths for 10 years prior and kind of come to my naturopaths, talking about, hormone stuff or little things that I wanted, symptoms I was having, but really nobody had really talked to me about that or asked me, are you having a daily bowel movement? Are you sweating? Nobody had really talked to me about that. So I found it really intriguing that all of a sudden, when, I was having these big symptoms and, started really going into functional medicine, this was a big part that I see so many women come to me, and it's an important part of the journey. And often we see on TikTok or social media, somebody jumping into, the latest parasite cleanse, or, jumping into something. And the liver is really important for our hormones. Our gut and our liver, when it comes to our hormones, are processed in these two places. And so if there is congestion, or our hormones aren't able to process properly. So we really need to focus on those two areas. So I do a 7-day or 14-day functional medicine liver detox with my clients, because if our liver is congested, we're going to really struggle with inflammation and those toxins coming out of our body. So once I was able to recognize, hey, the liver plays a really big part, and I have no idea, I've never supported it. I have never really even thought about, what if it is sluggish? What if it is congested? And we know fatty liver disease is on the rise, but it's not due to alcohol. It's not. It's, due to stress, processed foods, all those things that daily are coming into our lives that are really making it sluggish, right? And so we have to recognize the liver does play a big part when it comes to hormones. So I had to, take a step back and say, because of mold, I wasn't having daily bowel movements. Like that is like usually you do have some digestive issues, and recognizing I wasn't absorbing my nutrients, I wasn't having daily bowel movements. That was all part of peeling back the process of recognizing I need to start slow and I need to start here. I can't jump into this crazy protocol, even though I wanted, relief and I wanted those symptoms to, be gone immediately. I knew I needed to support my body and basically go into just, and sometimes I say with my clients, the three P's, and just going back to, pooping, peeing, and perspiring, right? Like get down to the basics, and we can easily do it. It doesn't need to be complicated, and it doesn't need to be something you have to feel like, oh, I have to be doing a castor oil pack every day. It can be easy. We want to be having, obviously, start our bowels, right? There is, an order that we want to start with. We want to start with our bowels. And if we aren't having those daily bowel movements, you have to think it's, recirculating. All these toxins are recirculating through the body. And if you're not hydrating, the kidneys are going to struggle. You need to be making sure that you're going to the bathroom and peeing lots, because you want to get out those toxins and flush them out of your system. So like at the basis, you want those daily bowel movements. You want to be drinking and flushing out your kidneys. And then our lymph, basically needs to be manual. It doesn't have a pump on it. So we need to manually move our lymph. And so that can be easy as, doing, rebounding, get a little, rebounder or mini trampoline. That's really good. And manually moving and doing dry brushing. Dry brushing doesn't take a lot of time. It's not expensive. They're about $8. You can buy them anywhere. And just even before you get into a hot Epsom salt bath, do some dry brushing. And I teach my clients how to do that they can, before we go into anything, the liver detox, or before we go into really reducing that inflammation and getting toxins out of our body, this is what we do. And we spend time, like we need to start here. So it is a really important part of the process when it comes to healing your hormones and just in general, reducing that inflammation. And it can be really easy, and just incorporating a few things like castor oil packs, so good for your liver to help create that bile that's going to help, push out those toxins, is so important. And maybe even I have a sauna. That was really important when I had mold toxicity. I needed to sweat. I needed to really, I wasn't sweating. And so that was an important part of mine is, red light therapy and just sweating it out was really important for me. And those were just key components before I dove into the mold and the gut and all the other things, parasite cleansing. That was, part of the process.
Yeah. And I love that. Again, very educational. I want people to understand, there are a lot of buzzwords like liver cleanse and detox and all of that. And please don't just buy any liver cleanse and try it on your own. Please get somebody who understands how that works. Please work with somebody, because the last thing you want to do is cause your body even more, wreak more havoc on your body by not understanding and then doing something that is more harmful than helpful and all the things. But also, if whatever age you are, it took you all the little tiny decisions and steps and not knowings and all the things to get you where you are today. It's not going to be a simple fix. Nothing in life is simple. And so it's layered. And so when she's talking about, if you have candida, well, yes, you do want to kind of eradicate some of that and get your microbiome more balanced out. But if you aren't pooping and you're trying to eradicate it and you're killing it, and then it has nowhere to go, it is just recirculating in your body, which you're not going to feel good, right? You're going to feel worse because it doesn't have anywhere to go. So I love your simplicity of poop, pee, and what was the third one? Poop, pee, and perspire. Yeah. Perspiring was part of my issue also. I'm not a huge perspirer. And when I go to saunas, a lot of times I can only go for a short amount of time because it makes me not feel good. I know it's necessary, but I've got to kind of build up to that. And I recognized that first couple of times I went when I wasn't feeling good. I was like, well, that's weird. I was perspiring, but I also felt sick because my body wasn't used to that. So I think perspiring is very important. Again, there are some basic things that we can all do to start in a way that isn't going to be harmful. Perspiring is one of them, making sure you are hydrated and pee. If you're not a person who has bowel movements daily, that would be something to work on. Sometimes that is hard to figure out. I have a lot of people that are in my world and clients that have come to me where it's like, it's really hard for them to figure out why they're not. Now they do eventually, right? It does work out eventually, but it's like, it could be a frustrating process. So give yourself grace, right? Because when you're stressed, you're definitely not having a bowel movement for sure, because you're clenching, you're tight, and then you got to relax. So I think for some people, simply the art of relaxation helps people to have more consistent bowel movements. Changing up some of your food, of course, that's always going to help. But again, if you are struggling, you need to make sure that you are seeing somebody beyond just a regular doctor that isn't going to give you the answers that you're actually looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I love that you said was, as you kind of went through all this testing, right? And my first experience with GI testing was with my girls. And I tell anybody and everybody, like, it is the most fascinating test to get. It shows you, it draws this gigantic picture of what is going on in your body that you have no idea about, because who looks at poop, right? Like when you go to the regular doctor, they're not really so fast to like, hey, let's take a look at that. So again, if you're someone struggling, it does cost a little bit, but what the amount of information you get out of it is definitely worth it. I think my hope for the long run is that eventually some of these tests become so well documented and so well in the mainstream that they do start being covered, because they should. You can go for 22 blood tests, but you can't add on like the actual functional part of testing. Why? To me, it's just annoying. But with that being said, what I did love that you said was, now that you have kind of healed, right, some of that stuff, you're now moving into that perimenopause. And just because you've healed all that stuff doesn't mean you're going to have like an easy ride, right? It doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have the hormone fluctuations, because that's part of it, right? Everybody's going to go through that. You're going to be set up better though, because you've done a lot of hard work prior to, but you're still going to have to manage those things. So I love that you talked about cortisol and blood sugar regulation, because again, I think there's a lot of buzzwords out there, right? And, blood sugar regulation is very important at all ages, but especially important when you're getting into the hormone fluctuations. So could you talk just a little bit about like regulating that? And then I have a few other things to ask you about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You are absolutely right. Like perimenopause is not a condition. It's not something we can avoid. It is a natural, progression in our hormones, and it's not something we can stop. But we really need to support our bodies different. Like perimenopause can feel very overwhelming. Here are new symptoms I'm feeling. I've never had maybe brain fog, or my cycles are changing, or the belly fat, right? We're experiencing all these things that, we've maybe never had. So we have to take a different approach. So what we did in our 20s and early 30s is not going to work anymore. So sometimes, women are coming to me and, they're still doing the cardio, and they're still, really just wanting to get on the treadmill and, go really intense, or go really, low calorie. And what's happening is that, eat less, work out more is just not serving their body anymore. It just isn't working. And then women get frustrated and say, I don't even know where to start. And when we're overwhelmed, we do nothing. And that's where I want to bring down that overwhelm and say, hey, this is where we can start. Let's take down the overwhelm and help educate women when it comes to their hormones, because you don't realize the impacts it's going to have, your estrogen and your progesterone, those sex hormones are changing. I mean, progesterone is declining and estrogen is on a wild ride, right? So you're going to feel those fluctuations, and it's easy to feel, am I just, am I losing my mind? What's going on here? So we need to educate and say, hey, and I also think it's important to talk about this. And I don't know for you, my mom never really talked to me about her transition. Perimenopause can last, 10 to 15 years. Like it can start as early as 35. So it's a long process. And that's a long time to not be supporting your hormones and just hoping you're surviving it. Women do not need to just survive perimenopause. You can thrive and do well. And that's what I want women to know is when, like you said, work with a practitioner, you can feel your best and go into going into menopause, but it is a long, journey. And women need to recognize that your hormones absolutely are changing and playing a part in, how your body's changing and your mind and everything. And when we see symptoms, those are little messengers to say, hey, start paying attention, start listening. And they're little and they can be subtle. But I think often as women, we just push through. We are busy. We have things we need to do. We have kids that need to get to soccer. We have kids that have homework and forms and, spouses. Like we have a lot on our plate. And that's where, we see the cortisol dysregulation and high cortisol, where a lot of times women, I do functional testing with women. And one of the ones I do with all my clients is the HTMA, the hair tissue mineral analysis. And we can see at a cellular level that you probably have high cortisol and you're in a stress state. So even at a cellular level, lots of times women say, I don't feel that stress, or I don't think I'm that stressed, but your body is feeling the stress.
Right. Like your body copes, right?
Yes,
your body, it sort of like, oh, this is how she's going to live, so I'm just going to kind of go along with that. And our bodies always want to be, in homeostasis, right? So for a very long time, your body can actually compensate for a lot of damage and things that we're doing or not doing. But then it just like any other kind of machine, it breaks down, right? It can only take so much and then it's overloaded itself. So
absolutely.
I do want to say like the overwhelm part. I do think as we start to age and children start to get older and they're more independent, and then they're driving and they're starting to do things on their own, and then they are going to college, we do tend to have a little more time. And I think that's where a lot of women all of a sudden are like, oh, I don't know who I am, I don't feel good, like what is wrong, it's like I can't remember, I can't do this. And then they think it's because they don't have the children at home anymore. They start blaming it on other things, because we've been going for so long. So again, if you're someone out there who is in this season of life and you are gaining some time back and your body is whispering to you, this is the time to step up. This is the time to really start to give back to yourself because you haven't done it for so long. And it doesn't have to be an overwhelming process, because anything that you do for the good is going to eventually bring good, right? And then working with somebody who can, stand by you and knows about testing and knows that hair analysis test, amazing. I had that done myself. Again, the story that it paints in the picture, it's like, wow, how does it know that? It's like, and you're right, because it is to your cellular level. And, when I go see my chiropractor, he's like, what's your stress level? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm going to say it's nothing. And you're going to find 82 things that say it's not, right? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to say it's a lot. And then you're going to be like, you seem relaxed, So I'm like, depends on how I'm managing it that day, right? But life is lifey. And so you're always going to have stress. But what do you do with that? And I do believe by setting up your days differently and giving back to yourself in the morning time really does set the tone for the day. And if you can get out of fight or flight early in the morning and you're not having crazy cortisol levels right off the bat, and you give that gift to yourself, you can really start to see shifts during your day. Now, your hormones, again, are always going to be having the ride. So that's an additional part. But if you can start to recognize when you feel heightened, if you can start to recognize when you feel like you're having a nervous system dysregulation, because, and we all know it, and what are those triggers? It's like finding out those triggers. And that's what I love to do. I love to help people kind of unravel that portion. And like you said, take that overwhelm out, because we've created overwhelm from us saying everything's overwhelming, right? We've created overwhelm because that's a story that we tell ourselves. This is going to be too much. I can't do this on my, I can't do this. And you don't have to do it alone. So, somebody like Marnee is with the experience of the testing. And most people that know me know, I always say test, don't guess, because then you're just sort of like slapping stuff on and throwing things at the wall. And, again, very big on the cleanse. Don't just jump into any cleanse, because it doesn't, is not helpful a lot of times.
Yes. Oh, totally. And I agree. Like when I do, when clients come into my program, that's not the first thing we do.
Correct.
They're well in my program, they're working with me. We're doing those things to set them up for success, because again, we want their body ready, and it is part of reducing inflammation and helping support the liver, because that's key with our hormones. But absolutely, you do not want to jump into something, because you can actually make yourself more ill or sick, and really, those symptoms could be worse off. So we don't want to jump into anything. And it's not a one and done. Like I don't say, guess what, 7 days and your symptoms are all, gone. That's not what it's about. It's about supporting the proper organs and pathways for your hormones. And this is a key one. So it's not just a one and done. And I know detoxes get a bad rap, but it is a functional medicine, liver detox that helps support that important system. And then we can create that momentum, which basically is helping, is a mini elimination diet in some sense of reintroducing foods so that you can support your gut and figure out what is happening and what is not serving you, what foods. And if the inflammation is high, we need to reduce that, because a lot of women come in and they're kind of on fire, right? And that's that inflammation part. But going back to the perimenopause, yes, it's never just one thing. And I kind of call it, it's like that metabolic chaos where we need to peel that back, where sometimes, in, traditional healthcare, it's like, well, let's just like work on the gut. Like it's like, you need to heal your gut, or it's your thyroid, where it's a system and we need to look at it holistically and as a whole. We can't just, focus in on one thing. It's usually years and years when women come into my program that they've had, continuous, stress, and their cortisol has been high and their blood sugar has been elevated, and we need to start working on that. Or it might be, some sort of inflammation. So we really need to peel back the layers. And I think functional testing is so powerful to be able to just not guess and hope it works what we're doing, so that we can see at a deeper level of what's happening with your metabolism and what's happening with those minerals, because you are going to feel exhausted and you're going to feel, fatigue and brain fog and all the things that you're feeling if your body doesn't have, those minerals, those core minerals in its cells. Like, we don't need sometimes fancy supplements. We need minerals, right? And often those are what is missing. And then when it comes to the GI map, it's so powerful to take a look and see what's actually happening with that, good gut bacteria. Do we have, a pathogen or something that's really playing a part, which is, causing these symptoms, to not go away. And sometimes we just chase symptoms, and chasing symptoms is going to just be expensive, frustrating, time consuming, and just really isn't going to get to how to truly heal your body. So I recognize that if you're just chasing those symptoms, it's going to be really difficult to get to that true healing of really pushing, past if women feel stuck with, weight loss, or weight gain, or belly fat. It's like, this just is, I've never had this before. I don't know what to do about it. But okay, we need to peel back and we need to really look at those core hormones, that are playing a part in all this, to really be able to budge some of that stubborn, belly fat, or really get rid of the, bloating, or a big one that I see too is, the brain fog and memory. And I go into a room and I forget what I'm doing, right? Those are hormones playing a part, but we really need to hone in and have a good look of what's going on in your body. So custom protocol is always going to be better than generic information, because we want to work and we want to know what's happening in your body. So I can, give you a generic protocol or give you generic advice, but I want to give you specific recommendations for what's happening in your body and specific recommendations of supplements that's going to help support what we're doing.
Yeah. And I love all that. And a couple of things that kept standing out as you were talking is, well, first of all, through our life, right? When you are in your 20s and your 30s, certain things work, like you said. And then as we get a little bit older and our body metabolism and our body makeup really changes, then it's trying to figure out what is right for us now. And so many people get stuck on the mainstream information, right? Like you said, getting on the treadmill, running 30 miles a week, all the things. And if you are somebody who doesn't understand cortisol, just a simplistic kind of way to walk away today, when you exercise, right, you're putting stress on your body. Good, doesn't have to be bad stress, but you're stressing your body and you get a cortisol spike, and so if your body's really not in the right time of your life to be doing that kind of giant, like hard stress, your inflammation's going to not be able to come back down, right? Like that cortisol level is going to stay up. And that's where you're going to start to get into some trouble, right? Because then your body's living more in that like high triggered state, and it doesn't ever come back down to the parasympathetic. So you're more in that like fight or flight kind of like rise. So when I think it's hard for people to wrap their minds around, well, if I'm not going to the gym and I'm not doing major cardio and I'm not lifting, super, super heavy, I'm not working out, I'm not getting. But you have to remember, like, our bodies have shifted. And just like as a baby, you wouldn't go run on a treadmill, right? I'm not saying you're a baby, but, back in those, you've got to support your body where it's at. And so the lower impact, yes, weight resistance is important during menopause and during this time, and also for older age and balance and all the things. But there's a difference between lifting 8 pounds and lifting 135 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's really just kind of reframing. And reframing the thoughts of what you've heard over the years that you should be doing, because what you should be doing and what you can do for your body at this time is different. The shoulds and the woulds and the coulds, they all kind of have to be thrown out. And I do believe that we go into this phase of menopause at this age because we are wiser, right? I'd like to think that we've had enough experience in life, whatever that looks like, from childhood to, adulting to then children, momming and all the things, that this happens to us in this stage, mom or not, because you're an adult, you've had a lot of experience, you are wiser. And now you can start to discern information and what is right for you and what is not right for you. So I think that's important. If you're listening today, look at your workout, and how can you tweak it? And what would feel better? And a simple walk in nature sometimes is so much more beneficial and impactful than going and running for 30 minutes on the treadmill.
Yeah,
sometimes people can still run because their body, is conditioned. They might not run as long or as hard, but they just enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, I think that's okay. Because it's not a one size fits everybody.
Totally. And I always say sometimes, in this season, sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes we need to just pull back a little bit, because that intensity, like cortisol in itself isn't bad. Like cortisol is,
right. It's there for a reason.
Yes. And it sometimes gets a bad rap because it's our stress hormone. Absolutely. But it is also that, hormone that gets us up in the morning and gets
Yes.
us going.
Going.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing. We do need a certain level. Like if it's kind of that Goldilocks, hormone where if
Right.
it's too high, it causes problems. But if it's too low, it also causes problems.
Right.
So we're trying to find that sweet spot where we know cortisol can be, it's going to be on the higher end, but we need to make sure that it's coming down, right? Because often, at the end of the day, if it remains high, and this is where hormone testing comes into play, and this is good information for us to know, is if it's remaining high, then you're probably going to be tired but wired because that cortisol stays high. And melatonin is a hormone, and we need melatonin to do its job and to get us ready to go to bed and help us fall asleep. But women that are having sleep issues, sometimes it goes together with that cortisol, that high cortisol. So you're not having, that, you're having that difficulty falling asleep. So cortisol, yes, absolutely. I tell my clients, guess what? You can't avoid stress.
No.
We can't avoid it. So if I, came to them and said, just don't stress less, that's not helpful. But
No.
how to approach stress is more important. So I really help women recognize, like you said, what are your triggers? What is happening, and what for one person it might not look the same. So you need to know what are those things. If being late is something you can't handle and that is going to skyrocket your cortisol, you're really going to be probably somebody that's, not going to want to be late. And if you are, get stuck in traffic, recognizing, okay, that is probably going to send you, your nervous system, right into fight or flight. But how do you end that stress cycle? So teaching, right? We need to come out of it. So if we stay in that heightened state, that is going to be problematic. So teaching and helping our bodies to come out of that stress and regulate is really important. And it's more than just a bubble bath. It's more than just, and not that those are bad, but stress happens every day, and you can't jump into a bubble bath, and you can't, some people use a glass of wine, but how do you truly help support your nervous system on a physical level? Like when I was really dysregulated, learning about the, vagus nerve, I recognized, okay, this is playing a big part in my health. And I physically was vibrating and so dysregulated. So when you're on the flip side of that, yes, it has huge impacts on a physical level. So really helping women recognize, do those things, but you need to be doing them daily because stress is coming at us all day, every day. And if you're in that heightened state, yes, your cortisol is going to, play a big part in how you feel and all the symptoms that come along with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you just said, like, it's a practice. It's a practice that has to be practiced daily because you are met with stress every day. And I always think when you were talking about the driving, I always think of like the road rage people, right? And I probably at one point in my life was like that, where I would be like, I'm going to be late, like, get out, I remember specifically one time on the way to work having a conversation with myself. I am going to be late. Like there was an accident. I'm like, life happens. I'm going to just call my boss and I'm just going to say, I left, on time. There's happened to be an accident. This is way before Waze and all the other stuff. Right. And I just had to accept that it's part of life sometimes. Sometimes you're just going to be late. Now I don't make it a habit and I don't, it wasn't a chronic thing, but because my perfectionist old self was like, I have to be there 15 minutes early, because that's what I was trained to do, kind of a thing. But recognizing that I was causing myself to go wired, because I was going to be late, I was like, okay, well, I can do that. Right. And I probably did a lot of times, but that day I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to, it is what it is. What can I do? And honestly, it was a much better ride to work. It wasn't like, and so like when my husband's driving, he gets annoyed. I'm like, that you're annoying yourself. Right. And you're like heightened, but these people over here that are causing that for you have no idea they're even doing that. Like they're over here having their time of their life, doing whatever, annoying you or singing or whatever. And you're over here, like your cortisol just went up. You're in fight. I mean, you're like, and he's like, oh, okay. It's like, but again, it's that you're conditioned. So those practices can't become a regular part of your lifestyle unless you are really practicing. And I love to teach people basic things. You're sitting at a light, close your eyes, take a deep breath, do some grounding. It's not expensive things. It is, if you did something and you didn't like it, talk to yourself. How could I reframe that next time? Why am I allowing that to trigger me? A lot of it is self-conversation. A lot of it is just recognizing what you didn't like or where you are or where you were, and like, how can you change that? But it is a practice. So you can't take a pill for cortisol. You can't take a pill for stress. You can't, it is little tools and tips and practices that you decide. And it starts with that decision, right? It starts with the awareness. And it starts, secondly, it's you making the choice. I'm not going to do that any longer. I'm going to serve myself differently. So, and I think, again, in this little bracket of perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause, we become wiser, and it's almost like we're drawn to that. Like, we're ready. It's like we've done all the stuff and now we're ready. But I think it's so cool to now be teaching my girls a little bit earlier. And my hope with that is, A, they hear me, and B, they will come up a little bit differently. And if we could teach that earlier generation these tools and stuff as they're approaching real stress, like real life stress and things, and how to work through it better, I think we could really make a very big shift. And I'm all about creating a bigger shift and a bigger, what's the word I want to use, but a bigger change, evolution, whatever you want to call it, for this next generation. Like, because my mom didn't talk to me. It was like, oh, I'm having hot flashes, I'm going into menopause. Okay. Like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds horrible. I mean, that was about it. Oh, she's sweating again. It was like, but those hot flashes are real, they're real. And again, you start digging when things become real to you. So if you're someone in those phases, if you walk away with nothing else, there are tools, there is hope. There are people out there that have a better understanding of what is happening in our body today, I think, than 20 years ago. And so I think we're blessed to be in this generation right now of people who are really trying to learn and discover. And so reach out, get support, and when it comes to transition, or when it comes to walking this journey, it is about a lot of different things coming together, because in order to manage your stress, in order to bring down the inflammation, food is part of that, right? Just like you said, you like to take the overwhelm out of the hormone thing. Like, I love taking the overwhelm out of food, back to the basics, really. It's like, it's back to the basics. When we talk about that, we have high insulin levels, like regulating our blood sugar. It matters what you put in your mouth. It just does. I mean, there's no way around it. And no pill is going to fix that forever. You may find someone who gives you a pill for something, and maybe you see a little reduction in whatever it might be. It's not going to be long term if you don't have the right tools and skills to move forward. So what is something that you like to talk to your clients about when it comes to food? Because I think that's a big one. I'm an ingredient reader type of person, and I'm a whole food person, and my audience knows that's what I love. But I'm just curious, like, what is your take on all of that?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to you, where let's get down to just keeping it simple and
Simple. I
going
love it.
back to whole food. You don't need fancy trackers and, complicate. I talk about macros in my program of, making sure you're hitting those, macronutrients. Yes, we want to have a balanced plate. So I, talk about, you want to have a balanced plate in terms of your macros. So yes, you want to have that fiber, you want to have that healthy fat and healthy protein, but let's not complicate it. And so I talk about, but we don't need to be tied to macro tracking, and we don't need a fancy meal plan. We don't need a fancy workout plan. So many women are caught up in just give me a meal plan, give me an exercise plan. Really, what you just need is to eat real foods. And when I say whole foods, what does that look like? I say, is it something that come from the ground? Is it something that come from a mother? Like, was it something living? Like, really, let's get back to basics and not complicate that. So really, we know, how we should be eating. And sometimes we get so scared of eating real food. And I say we have had a lot of fear over the years of, don't eat butter, don't eat steak, don't eat eggs, right? High cholesterol, high fat, or salt is bad. But guess what? let's go back to how we were, our ancestors and how, our great great grandparents ate, and just really go back to those whole foods, what they ate in the garden, what they just had available to them. They didn't have, Lunchables and, Doritos and all those things. Those are meant to make us want to have more. Like, they have chemicals in them that, are addictive, and we like them. Like, we want them, and our body loves that sugar and though, that addictive part of it. We get that. We know that when we start eating, all those things, we want more of it. But I want to teach my clients and the women in my program of how to eat. There's been lots of diets. When you come into, I always say to my clients and the women, you have come, like, you're probably in your late 30s, 40s, maybe 50s. You've probably watched a lot of, diets, and you've seen maybe your mom do, Weight Watchers, and you've seen Jenny Craig, you've seen all those. So you maybe you're coming in thinking low calorie or packaged foods, or if I just track everything. So you come in with a lot of pre-notion, like a lot of
stories, a lot of conditioning, really. It's
conditioning of what it should look like. And so sometimes we have to peel that back a little bit of, okay, no, if those worked, there wouldn't be new diets on the market all the time. If diets really worked, people wouldn't be on and off of them, right? They wouldn't have to keep going back to them all the time, right? And there wouldn't be that start or stop. So let's just go back to learning how to eat whole foods and how to nourish our bodies and eat for our hormones. And that's going to serve you way better than jumping on, the latest diet or fad or supplement that gives good promises, because I guarantee you it's going to probably fail you, or it's going to be a quick fix.
Yes. And I think what you said really is something that I definitely want to drive home is the first thing anybody really should do is look backwards. What story did you grow up with? What did you see growing up? What was the talk about eating healthy? What was the talk about the gym or exercising or movement? What was the discussion about dieting? There so much comes from the past of what we've heard and been conditioned or told or saw and all of that. And you've got to really, like you said, unlayer, but you've got to reframe all of that and start kind of on your own journey, right? And what works for you. And the whole macro, macros and micronutrients, they're real. They are things, right? But we don't have to call it a macro diet. We don't have to call it a micro. We don't have to call it a keto diet. We don't have to call it a whole 30. All of the parts and whatever, there was like South Beach and this and that, like they all give it a name because they want people to buy into the marketing part of it. But honestly, if you look at all of them as a whole, like she was saying, little parts and pieces will come along, right? Like each thing taught you something where you were at that time. I mean, you could take some value from anything and then you leave the rest, right? But macros just simply mean having the right food groups on a plate. So I think, again, taking the overwhelm of like, well, I can only have this much of this and this much of this. It's like showing people how to build a plate is much more powerful than telling somebody to have 30 this and 40 this and 20 this and half a cup of this. And that all becomes a mind game. But it's like, if you can just, people are like, what do you do? I said, I just build a plate. Like I cook healthy and then I build the plate and I don't ever worry about portions. I mean, obviously I'm not eating for 12 people, but there's just balance. It's balance. It's talking about like, if you're just having like a little thing for breakfast, is that really sustainable to get you through if it's 100 calories? No, probably not. I mean, and a bar isn't really what you need. You've got to put some time and effort also into your health and wellness. If you want to get healthy, and you just like if you want to run a marathon, you got to train for it. If you want to get healthy, you got to train for it. You got to work at the different things that you're not skilled in quite yet until you get those, and then they become second nature. So
I agree. And I think a lot of women are scared to eat to be full. So that's
right.
That satiety is very scary for women. And I'm a big advocate for eat a big breakfast. Get that protein on your plate, because a granola bar and a cup of coffee is not a breakfast. That is not serving you. And so I think women need to understand, yes, put the egg, have a couple eggs, making sure you're hitting those 30 grams of protein, but front load at the start of your day. If you hear anything, it's okay to feel full, because guess what? Most people are not overeating on eggs and steak and sausage and avocados. Like, really, when your body, signals, hey, I'm full, to satiety, that triggers your body to feel safety too. And it also helps regulate your blood sugar, reduces cravings through the day. All those things are going to compound throughout the day. So eating that breakfast, and I say this lots, and my clients are like, okay, I get it, eat a high protein breakfast. But for so many reasons, it's so beneficial for women to start off the morning, eating that protein, eating healthy, getting those healthy fats and getting those, healthy protein goals in, because it's going to set the rest of your day.
Mm-hmm. Your morning is, in all shapes and ways, it's like the quiet time you give yourself, the way you pour into yourself. Breakfast is part of that, right? Breakfast is nourishing your body. You nourish your soul, you nourish your body, you're setting yourself for a really good day, right?
Absolutely.
And yep, she said 30 grams. And as we're in this menopause age, you do have to up your protein. And I tell everybody and anybody that I can talk to and listen to, do a food diary, a food log, whatever you want to call it, just for a couple of days and get curious. It's not because you want to, don't change what you're eating, but just get curious. Like, write down what you're eating, and not only write down what you're eating, how do you feel 90 minutes, 30 or 60 to 90 minutes after you eat? Are you starving? Are you still really, really full? Are you bloated? Do you have gas? Like, all of those things mean something. Do you have high energy? Or are you like needing a nap? There's so many different things to look at, to get curious about. And the more you do investigation on the front side, the more you learn about yourself, and then the better choices you can make. So again, it's little tiny things. There is no diet plan. There is no, there are recipes. Yeah, there are recipes for great things. They're all over the place. We can provide them. You can look for them. That's the cool thing. I think sharing that kind of stuff is neat, because I love getting ideas from other people. But also, one day at a time, one step. And that's why I'm so I have such a big belief in the 1% shifts, because if we were to sit down, again, if you were running a marathon, and I don't know why I'm using this analogy, but you would not just open the front door and run your marathon. You actually do little tiny incremental steps to get ready to do that. And that's the same thing in your wellness journey. It's like, you've got to have a goal, but you've got to step way far away from that goal. And whatever you think you're going to feel like at the end of that goal, try to accomplish that every day. Do something small to give you that feeling you think you might get then. And it'll be a lot more fun, and you will be a lot calmer, and you won't feel like you're, not making progress when you're not seeing giant things. I love when people's like, oh, it's been a year that I've been on this journey, and I now am noticing so much. And it took a year. Yeah. But you're 45 years old. It took you 45 years, so 1 year of loving yourself and working on yourself, that's a gift in itself. But then you do start to see, things that start to change. Your body shifts when you do love it well. So we could talk all day long. You and I should probably go on a retreat together and just talk for a week. Before we end, though, I would love for you to share, because I know that people are finding your information very, very valuable. Just share a couple of non-negotiables you've created for yourself, as we are all looking for non-negotiables to feel our best. What do you do?
Well, I think because we've talked a lot about cortisol and stress, and one thing to mention is, as we get older, our bodies are not as resilient to stress. So that's why it hits us hard. So when we're getting into our 40s, 50s, we're not as resilient. So the little things really add up that we do. So things that were maybe not a big deal, in our 20s, 30s, become a bigger deal, and they hit us hard. So one of my non-negotiables is sleep. I just know, for me, as I get older, I can't stay up late as much as I want to watch, Netflix or my series. I just know the next day I will pay the price for it, right? So I've really had to dial in that night routine. And as hard as it is to not be on screens or, wear my, I have my blue light blockers and trying to get off screens, it's hard. But I know that on the flip side, if I don't get up in the morning, it's a struggle. It's a struggle throughout the day. So I really need to get my sleep. And on the flip side, I really need to start my morning when it comes to cortisol and stress levels and all that. I talk this and we implement this in my program, the Restored Hormone Solution, with all my clients is, what does your morning look like? And you talked about that. How we start our morning will set our day. So do we grab the phone? Do we scroll social media? Do we check our emails? Again, it's not easy because we're conditioned and that's the easy thing to do. And we're looking for that distraction or we feel, what are we missing out? But not grabbing my phone first thing in the morning, right? And not having, a cup of coffee, for my hormones right off the bat. So what am I doing first thing in the morning? I really have my clients work on that morning routine to get their morning and their day set up, which will be crucial. And it snowballs, like it's it compounds throughout the day. So right, if you start your morning off, you're probably going to be more resilient to stress and you're probably going to be able to deal with stress better if you have that mindful morning routine, if you slow yourself down. And it doesn't need to look complicated or 20 minutes long. I get it. You're a mom, you're busy, but maybe it's even 5-10 minutes before the kids get up, because as soon as their cute little eyeballs are open, it's game on. You're a mom, like you need to do all the things and it becomes busy. So just set that 5-10 minutes aside. And really, if it's journaling, I sit in front of my red light sometimes and I read or I journal or I just have that couple moments to just slow down before the day starts. So sleep, morning, and probably just and again, we talked about it, protein is, I'm really noticing is if I don't start with a high protein breakfast, I want to snack all day and it snowballs. And I find that I'm just not, I'm snacky. I want, right? Because it spikes that. Yes. And if I have, oatmeal and it's not that oatmeal is bad in itself. However, we do know what it's going to do to your blood sugar. So how are you if you are having oatmeal, but are you having some healthy fats and are you having protein with it? So if I'm adding, just grabbing something that I know is really not going to satiate me and is not high protein, again, that sets my day up for struggles. And then I'm really relying on willpower. And let's be honest, it's hard to rely solely on willpower. So there are strategies you can do. And I love teaching women. There are strategies to set your day up so that you can eat well and feel well.
Yeah. Two things. So the whole breakfast thing, and I do get the oatmeal thing. I like oatmeal some days. I don't eat it all the time. But I have learned to build my oatmeal in a way, like you said, it's not really going to spike my blood sugar because I add in really good fats and healthy proteins, and I do, a little bit of, antioxidants and things like, so I've built it in a way where I'm still getting a lot of protein. I'm not just opening up. It's also gluten-free and it's glyphosate free, because to me, the other thing I was going to say is not all whole foods are created the same. Not all foods are not created the same, but that also goes for whole foods. And so I love to educate people on, when you are looking at eggs, there are different kinds of eggs for different reasons. And one is cheaper, one is more expensive. That doesn't necessarily dictate the quality all the time, but it does speak to things. And so I like to educate people on, how do you pick the best meat? How do you pick the best fruit and vegetables? Where do you dial in and spend a little more money, and where do you pull back a little bit? Because that matters. And so again, if you are way over here and you don't eat any produce, just start with picking one thing. And then as you get more seasoned into it, then really dial into, how it's grown and things like that. But I do think that morning routine, it sounds so simple, and people are like, oh, I don't have time for that. But if you think about when your babies are babies, right, you have a routine. Most people wake up, they change their baby, they might get another bottle and go back to bed if they're that small. Or they might get up and get dressed for the day and then come down. Everybody has a routine. You just have to shift the routine a little bit. And I will say, we are a generation that had no phones, right? We are the last generation that is growing up that had a period of life without phones. So we know it's possible because we did it. And it is a challenge because it's not what we've been conditioned to recently, and it is addicting and all the things. But I mean, I tell all my clients, move your phone away from your hands. So when you go to sleep at night, even if it's your alarm clock, put it in the bathroom. And you have to get up to get it anyways, and that makes out better. But move it away, put it on airplane mode. Like those radiations, the EMFs, all of that matters. I mean, it matters for your sleeping condition. So those morning routines are impactful. Like having that set up for the day is much more powerful than rushing all around and then going to work out for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
So, well, this has been more than enjoyable. I've learned so much, and I know that my audience is going to be able to take away so much from this conversation. For those following along with the podcast, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm marnee.deyoung. So you can find me there, and you can find me on Facebook. And I also have a webpage, which is just www.marneedeyoungwellness.com. So those are 3 places that you can find me.
Okay. And I will drop all of that into the show notes along with her bio and some other links to her course and things that she's doing, so that you guys, if you want to get dialed into Marnee, you will know where to go. And then, of course, there'll be a few questions below the podcast if you guys want to have more conversation, and then join the Facebook group where we will have even further conversation about this episode this week. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to y'all soon.
Hey, y'all. I hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. A couple of things that I wanted to emphasize before leaving today. We talked about the significance of adopting, holistic approaches to health, recognizing that issues like hormonal imbalances, mold toxicity, and gut health can be interconnected. We also really talked about self-advocacy in your own health, especially when traditional medicines and approaches are not working for you, suggesting that we look at the functional medicine practitioners and comprehensive testing to try to find root causes so that you can tackle those things in order to start to heal from the root up. We did talk about some of the symptoms, being inflammation, stress, hormonal imbalances, gut health, and, changing some of the things that we do, like our eating, our lifestyle, our movement, to be appropriate for where we are at during our time of healing. And lastly, we talked about the importance of specializing protocols to individual needs. What strategies do you need to maybe support your liver function or promote better bowel health or regulate your cortisol levels, learning how to safely detoxify your body. Remember, all of these things are customizable depending on where you're at in your journey. So don't just hop on something that you see on social media that seems like a quick fix. Please visit with either a functional practitioner or an integrative practitioner so that you can do things safely and get the results that you're actually looking for. Thanks for tuning in today. I loved being here with you. I hope that you got something from today's episode. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Drop a comment below, and if you feel led to, download the episode and share it with someone you love that needs to hear this message. As we continue to spread the goodness of this podcast, I'd love for you to help us by leaving a review on Apple Podcast or a rate on Spotify. As we increase listeners, we will come up more often when women are searching for podcasts to listen to. To stay connected with me, you can check out my social media pages at Live Life Balanced with Robin. You can check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com. You can book a discovery call. And if you're looking for a way to get started right now, you can opt in for my new quick guide for the empty nester refresh. And as always, thank you for letting me be part of your day. It truly means a lot that you're allowing me to be on your wellness journey with you. Until next time, find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to happen.